Welcome to Love You Longmont. I'm Linda Bond, and today we're going to take a studio tour. This is part of Longmont's studio tours, and it's presented by Arts Longmont. It is so much fun. We're going to go to see some artists today in their environment, so you're going to really get to go behind the scenes. And if you participate in that, you'll get to go behind the scenes also. We have Susan Krause with us and Joanne Curvis. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is kind of a sad day. One of the last interviews that we'll do with you as Executive Director of Arts Longmont. How are you feeling about going off and enjoying it?
I think it'll be bittersweet. I don't know what it'll feel like when I suddenly stop going to the gallery in the office. We will have to see.
How long have you been with Arts Longmont?
I've been with Arts Longmont for 14 years, and I've been director for 9.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so it's been a few years.
I know you've seen a lot of changes.
Yes.
Can you tell us what Arts Longmont was like when you started, and maybe compare it to what it's like now?
So when I started, I actually started as the project manager for Longmont Studio Tour, so this is kind of apropos to be here. And so I've seen a lot of change in the organization and development of the board, and really I think the biggest thing is making sure that people know that Arts Longmont is open to the whole community, and really whether it's artists or people coming into the galleries, that it's a much more accessible organization.
Was it always a gallery?
No, Arts Longmont started with artists in residence within the schools. Art in Public Places actually started with Arts Longmont. Back in the day, we were known as Longmont Council for the Arts. And then the gallery didn't come until 1999, and then Studio Tour in 2000.
And you even changed the name.
Yes, we did. After we went through our strategic planning process right before we turned 30, we heard from the community that Longmont Council for the Arts really didn't tell the true picture of what we did, and really thinking it was a closed off group, or it was a council, or it was a city organization. And so when we thought about it, we do the arts and we do them in Longmont. So keep it simple, Arts Longmont.
So one of the first things you did was the studio tours.
Correct.
What were the studio tours like when you started?
You know, there's a lot that kind of has remained the same in the sense that it's always been high quality artists, and the numbers have grown probably over the years. You know, when it started originally, I think we were like 18, 19 artists that started. This year we're at 55. I think on our 10th anniversary we had close to 70 because we brought back some of the original artists. Sure. And I mean, the thing that's also stayed the same is the artists that are on the tour. They do primarily all of the planning, so the project manager oversees and kind of checks things off the list and keeps them moving, but they do the design of the program and updates on the website, all the marketing. A great group to work with, one of our best run programs, and it's wonderful to work with them.
It is an amazing, amazing opportunity for people to see how people work. Susan, we appreciate you taking us all around this area, showing us studios. How did you pick the artists that you showed us?
I wanted to have a good variety of different types of art, so we have some painters and a ceramicist and a jeweler, and I thought it was good to let people understand that it's not just painting or one type of art. And I also wanted to pick some different areas in the city, because we do extend out beyond the Longmont city limits into Gun Barrel area, so I wanted to show people that the tour is a pretty large footprint.
You know, people think, oh gosh, all the way over in Gun Barrel, all the way in Niwot, and it's so close compared to driving in any really huge city.
Right.
You feel good. We're going to see Scott Fraser first.
Great.
So let's go and look at Scott Fraser's studio.
I'm Scott Fraser, and this is my studio. And I've been here for over 20 years, and I've been part of the studio tour now for 19 years. And this has worked out very well. It's got natural light. It's got more light than I need, and I've just enjoyed working here day to day. It's private, and I've got my still life set up here, and got my dog. My wife comes and goes. My kids grew up in this house, and I love being an artist.
Scott Fraser was one of the founders of the studio tours. Scott, I love the idea that we get to go into people's homes and into their studios. That seems like an awful lot of exposure for you. Were you nervous when you first started this idea? What was it, 19 years ago?
Yes, it was. I was one of the founders, and it's always a little nerve-wracking to let people in your home.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we had several hundred over a weekend, and the last time I did it, I had over 400 through over a weekend, and it can be really fun, meeting new people. And
It's fun, but it's also inspiring to meet artists who are working in art. That's really neat. I love that. And I love the fact that your studio has become what you most wanted it to be. You created your own courtyard so you get privacy, built in these skylights so you'd have light. Does it suit everything you need?
Pretty much. It really does. The wood floor is easy to keep clean. It's actually clean right now.
It is clean.
It gets pretty messy sometimes through different projects, and the projects vary in size, so the mess varies in size too.
How would you describe your art?
I guess I would be considered a realist painter, narrative realist. I started out in Longmont 40 years ago after I got out of art school, and I was a landscape painter for a good 6 or 8 years. And then I went to Europe, and it kind of changed my look, and then view on art, and turned to become a still life painter.
What is this saying?
This is part of a series I did called the Monkey Inferno series, and this is probably number 5 or 6, and the monkeys get more and more mischievous with each piece, and it always has to do with fire and matches, and I don't know. People have asked me, was I a pyromaniac? And no, I wasn't. It offers an interesting tension to it, and it's also humorous, kind of maybe has a little Bugs Bunny in it.
So you paint fire, you don't set it. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I've lit matches just to observe the flame, for hours on end. And and if you can see here, I painted the match in watercolor and glued it in. And people who will buy this piece also get that piece, so that's framed too. So you could pick it up and shake it, and the matches won't fall out. So
that is so fun.
So it's kind of like a little shadow box that goes with the work.
Have you ever done stage sets? When did you start doing sets?
I don't know. It just kind of evolved into working from life. I can't really answer that.
It just started happening.
It just started happening.
Would you say that this studio shows who you are?
No, not necessarily the studio, but the work that I do that comes out of the studio. Pretty much, and those objects come and go.
What sort of things will we see at the studio tour?
Well, hopefully I'll have this done, and all the 1,000 matches, and I would like very much for people to see my book.
Oh, let's talk about your book. It's so exciting.
Yeah.
This is your work.
Yeah, it's a real labor of love, and my wife was a big part of it, and we've been working on it for 5 years.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just come together, and it'll be launched very soon. So hopefully at the studio tour we'll get books, but there will be mock-ups for people to view.
Oh, what you do.
Things,
it's so creative, so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for allowing people to come in and see your work and to see
You're
your
very
wonderful
welcome.
studio.
Thank you.
And I know we'll see you later.
Thank you very much.
Susan has also brought some pieces that are going to be people's studios are going to be shown during the tour. Now, Susan, tell us about this one.
So this piece to your right is by John Taft. And I think John moved to Longmont maybe 6 or 7 years ago. He actually worked in the video business. He was an art director in New York City.
Wow.
And he has a family of I think 4 kids. And he's one of the artists that I really admire on the tour because he's actually raised a family painting. A lot of the artists do another job and they paint and they make money in both locations, but John actually manages to make a living out of art. And he does beautiful, large Western landscapes. He just had a show at a Vail art gallery. So yeah, his work is really spectacular. He also does beautiful figurative work.
Oh.
And his studio is on the west side of Longmont on just off of Mountain View.
Oh, I'd love to take a look at one of the very young artists that you included, and that's Erin DeLargy, and she's a jeweler. This is Erin DeLargy, and we're so pleased that you allowed us in your studio. Now, you're going to have people tromping all through your things during the studio tour. How do you feel about that?
You know, it'll be my first time really having a lot of people coming in, so it'll be a new experience.
What are you doing to prepare for it?
Well, I definitely cleaned up for you guys and
nice.
organized quite a bit, yeah. And this was a good preparation to kind of feel out what that'll be like later on, so yeah.
You've been in Longmont about 6 years. Have you been an artist all that time?
Oh yeah, I've been an artist my whole life.
Your whole life?
Yeah,
How
I was
wonderful.
always
That's
creating
exciting.
something or tinkering with something. I've explored a lot of different media, but jewelry has really come to be my main focus and
You
passion.
found what it is you love to do, and your jewelry is wonderful.
Thank
Tell us a
you.
little bit about how you make the choices about what kind of jewelry you're going to make.
I love stones. When I was a kid, I was a total rock hound and I had a stone collection, a rock collection.
That's neat.
So I love organizing different stones and different patterns and stone setting. Design and layout feel really compelling to me, and different colors. So I often just have a lot of pieces going on my bench and let something speak to me, let a piece speak to me before I really finish it.
Do you follow trends?
Sometimes I don't really get online and look at different ideas. I like to just play with my own imagination and dream in that way. Yeah.
Well, walk us through the steps that you go through when you create a piece of jewelry.
So first, if there's stones involved, I take the stones and I do what's called bezeling. And so that is actually, it's on this ring, you can see that's the silver that's holding the stone in place. So I first measure that, thank you. And then I solder that shut, so it's kind of like a little enclosure.
That's good.
And then depending on what it's going to go on, like a ring band, I'll measure the ring band, shape that around a mandrel, which forms it into that round shape, solder that shut, and then there's more hammering and finishing work to do.
So you're banging around and
I
soldering.
am, yeah.
That sounds like so much fun.
It's a lot of loud kind of processes, yeah.
That's so neat.
It's a good time.
Erin, it's wonderful to have your own studio. Where do you think you would be without your own studio?
And it's the first time I've had a studio at my home, which is really nice. You know, it has pros and cons, but mostly pros for me. Occasionally I'll get distracted and, do the laundry in the middle of working, but
I love that.
yeah, I, set up the space and just knew kind of what I needed, and had collected different things here and there to make it even more workable. But
And nobody else is interfering with it. It's your
just mine.
space.
Yeah.
A space of your own.
It's amazing. I can leave things out, not when you guys come, but most of the time I'll leave things in process at the end of the day and then come back the next day.
Well, thank you so much for letting us see your studio, and I know people are going to love it on the studio tour.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. Every year there's a featured artist. Susan, tell us about this year's feature.
So this year's featured artist is Donald Sayers, and he's actually been on the tour since about 2002, and he's also a very long time Boulder County resident. Actually lives in Niwot. We did actually another separate video for him for the tour to promote him, and we're doing a little bit of extra promotion in the map, so he gets a little bit more exposure, and we just wanted to really highlight some people that we feel, this is the first year for a featured artist, and we wanted to kind of do a little bit more highlighting of that artist for the tour. His work is often figurative, but also he does a lot of horses. It's kind of semi-abstract, but it's quite beautiful. I really enjoy his work.
Well, that's really neat. Another Niwater is Marc Rossier. Let's go see his pottery. We're in the studio of Marc Rossier, and I'm very excited to be here because I love pottery and I love what you do. Have you been doing this here in this spot for as long as you can remember?
Actually in this spot for about the past 12 years, but I've actually been a professional potter for over 30 years.
How do you feel about having people come through your studio on the studio tours?
Oh, I actually love it because I'm very used to having people coming while I'm working and being able to talk to them. So that I don't mind at all. And the great thing about the studio tour is it just always, people find me that didn't know, that I was here and what I do.
Sure.
And so I'm happy to talk to people.
But you worked in production art for a while, so
Yes.
that's one reason you don't mind people coming through and
That's
watching
right.
what you do.
Yeah, it's how I learned. I worked in large production potteries, basically.
In Taos
So,
and
Taos, New Mexico, and in Quechee, Vermont. So so that's how I learned. I really learned how to make pottery, and I also learned a lot about the business of being an artist. That was one of the wonderful things about it too. what
I
it
think
really
that is
takes.
something people have to learn.
Yes.
An artist isn't necessarily somebody who thinks, gosh, I got to sell this, I got to pay my bills, I got to
Right.
do all that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I love the studio and I love the way it's configured. Has it evolved over time, or 12 years ago, was it
Oh
this
yes.
from the beginning?
Oh yeah. When I first moved to this area, I was part of a co-op studio. I had about 100 square feet of space, about a 10 by 10.
100 square feet.
Sharing a lot of communal space and equipment, and I've just kept growing from there. So yeah, it's changed quite a bit, and it's been in different locations too over all that time. So that was in 1992 when I first came to this area.
It seems very organized. Do you know where everything is at all times?
Oh yes.
And is that who you are?
I think it's who I am. A lot of people walk into my studio, particularly other potters, and they say, "Oh my gosh, you're so tidy," But yeah, it's who I am. I really I like to know exactly where things are, and in fact, it's interesting. Right now, I'm just starting a new cycle of work, so I'll tend to make a lot of work, and then it goes out, ideally, and then I start again. So it's, I'm just beginning to make the first pieces for the next round of work.
Well, walk us through the steps of creating pottery.
Well, it's the first thing. I do most of my work on the wheel, and really the first part of the process is working with the wet clay and throwing things like these I just made this morning, these pieces. And a lot of times as people watch me throw, I like to tell them that that's the easy part in some ways, because it looks very quick and very easy. I have a lot of practice, but there's a long process from there. So then the pots have to dry, and these will get handles added to them or things like that and finished. They go through the kiln the first time, and they're fired to a relatively low temperature, about 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I can decorate them and glaze them and fire them a second time to a higher temperature.
Well, it's wonderful that you're on the studio tour, but what would you say what would your art be like if you didn't have a studio?
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine that. It's really interesting. I do really think that the most important tool I have is my studio. I really believe that. I know plenty of people that work in clay, and particularly because a lot of us have had exposure to ceramics and pottery in all sorts of city programs and things like that. And a lot of people try to set up a spot in their garage or their basement.
Right.
And it was really clear to me working in very nice production studios that how the studio functions is really important. And as you look around here, it also needs to inspire me. I feel really strongly about that. So that's why there's so many things on the walls and things around me. I mean, everything from posters from shows and photographs to my guitar to because I want that sort of input back into what I do. So I can't imagine not having a studio. I don't know what I would do without a studio.
So your environment is really your art.
Yes. Oh, it's crucial. Oh. Absolutely. And this setting in Niwot here, and yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're welcome.
allowing people to come to your studio.
No, it's a pleasure, really. It is.
I love the sculpture that you brought, Susan. Can you tell us about it?
Yes, this is by artist Katie Diver, and she actually does a variety of work, but she does these lovely garden sculptures. This one's called The Little Blue Prince. She also does these wonderful totems, and she's also a teacher. So she has a studio that's a whole house. It's a small house in Longmont on 6th Street, and so she has classroom space, and she has these great classes to teach how to build these totems. She also does these wonderful plaques. She does pet illustrations, and she does really lovely work.
She sounds really interesting.
Yeah, she's great.
But you brought a piece of yours as well. I'm sorry, I didn't
Well,
interrupt you.
she's actually the longest running artist on the tour. So she was there at the very beginning, and she's been at every tour since then.
Oh, that's a great perspective she has. Tell us about your art. I'm so pleased that you brought one of your own.
So I'm an encaustic painter, and I'm actually going to be, Katie has a big enough space that she shares space with other artists. And I'm going to be on the tour at Katie's location. And that's kind of a cool thing. We have about 5 or 6 locations where there's multiple artists at a single stop, so it lets people see a lot of art in one place.
That's
Now,
great.
I do encaustic, which is hot pigmented wax, and in this particular piece, I've been doing a series where I am embedding shed snake skin into the work.
Oh my goodness.
So this part along the middle is actually the skin of a snake that's embedded into the wax.
And see, that is a piece of art. That snake skin is
It's
art
itself.
as
Yeah.
yeah, it's just beautiful. Well, thank you. We're going to go to one more space, and it's Annie Espriella, and she's a painter and does oil and chalk. Let's visit. We're in Gun Barrel, and this is Annie Espriella. Is that right?
That's close.
All right, you say it.
The real way is Espriella.
Now, that is because you were born in Colombia. That's very exciting, and lived in Miami. Now, when you lived in Miami, you had a very different life than what you have here.
I sure did. I was a singer in a band for 20 years.
Oh my goodness.
And that was my job for 20 years
And
before I moved here.
Miami would be an exciting place to be a singer in a band.
Very exciting.
Very, and wonderful, because it's like a party city.
Yes.
Yes.
Party city for sure.
But when you moved to Gun Barrel, that all changed.
Yes, it did. I moved here with my family, and I stopped singing for 10 years, and I decided I needed some kind of creative outlet. So I decided to try my hand at visual art. So I started taking painting lessons, and with a neighbor that lives in the neighborhood. Actually, there's a lot of artists in this neighborhood.
Oh, that's neat.
And we started taking painting lessons together, and in 2005, and that's how I started.
Well, your art is wonderful. It's really
Thank
beautiful.
you.
How would you describe what you do?
What do I do? Well, I teach. I'm a teacher, and I teach pastels and oils here in this room. So I have kind of set up like a little classroom. I can fit up to 5 people in here,
Oh, that's wonderful.
which I really enjoy teaching. I actually have a degree in education, and I always thought I would be a teacher. So I'm really excited to be an art teacher.
So you became an artist,
so-
and then you became a teacher.
Yes,
How wonderful.
I did.
That's
I
neat.
did. And my favorite place to paint is outdoors. I do a lot of plein air painting. I paint outside, and a lot of my work, my smaller work, is out plein air. A lot of it, the bigger pieces that you see around are studio pieces, but I really prefer to paint outside from life.
Wonderful. Tell us about your art. You said that you do oils and
Yes,
pastels. I love your pastels. They're beautiful.
Thank you. I started out with oils. I painted in oils for several years, and in the last 3 or 4 years, I was introduced to pastels by a couple of artist friends that did pastel, and I really fell in love with it. And now I do more pastel than I do oil, so most of the things you see up are pastel paintings. I just love the vibrancy of the pastel colors and they're a lot quicker to paint with. And since I like to paint outdoors, you have to paint quick because the light is changing so quickly.
That's true.
So I really, pastel is really great for that. So
And is it more forgiving than oil?
no,
No.
no. Oil, actually, you can just wipe it out because it doesn't dry. Pastel's a little less forgiving, but just for some reason, I really took to it, and it's probably my favorite medium at the moment. I might change my mind, I don't know.
What's the art scene like in Colorado, in Gun Barrel?
Oh, it's great. There are so many artists in Colorado. I have so many great friends, and we love to hang out together. We love to paint out together. I have groups of friends that we go painting, plein air painting up at the Rocky Mountain National Park, or we're always on the lookout for beautiful places to paint. So
That's so nice.
it's really fun. And even in this neighborhood, in Gun Barrel, there are many artists just right here in my own neighborhood that are friends of mine. So
What would your art be like if you didn't have a studio?
I wouldn't paint larger pieces. They would all be 8 by 10s and 9 by 12s
Right.
because I'd be painting outside all the time. But it doesn't. You don't really need a large space to. If you want to paint bad enough, you can find a little corner in your room. I'm just lucky that I get to use all of this space in my house.
Well, your studio is also like a gallery.
Yeah, well, I have to put them somewhere. And luckily I have these nice big walls to hang my work. So, and they'll all be here available for studio tour.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Annie. We
Thank
sure
you,
do appreciate
Linda.
it.
Thank you so much for coming here.
Yeah. We're so lucky to have spent some time exploring the studios and learning about this art, but there's much more to be seen. Now, Joanne, tell us about the preview party and how we can come and see the rest of them.
So each artist features one of their pieces in the Arts Longmont Gallery, and it's the preview exhibition show. It opens on Friday, September 8th. There is a reception, so it's a really great way to meet some of the artists. It's one of my favorite receptions because it's the only time we get that many of our local artists in one location. So it's a lot of fun. This year we added a new piece to the opening, and it's a fundraiser. So over the years, studio tour artists have made miniature masterpieces. It's kind of a quick, accessible way to buy some art from maybe Scott Fraser if you can't afford a Scott Fraser or a John Taft. But the artists there'll be a silent auction. So each artist will have a miniature masterpiece. So that will be part of the opening. And then you get a map, which is available at the gallery. And we always say that, take a look around and see what artists really intrigue you. Get your map and plot out your tour. The actual tour is Saturday, September 23rd and Sunday, September 24th. And it runs from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can, start at one of the studios. You can go to our website, artslongmont.org, and go to the Longmont Studio Tour page. And you can see the interactive map. You can see all of the artist information there.
Oh, wonderful.
The gallery will be open the weekend, so if you don't have a map and you just want to stop by and plot your tour that weekend, you can as well.
Is there any way to do a small walking tour of this, or are they so far flung?
It depends. There's some neighborhoods that you can get, like around downtown, that have some groups. And Niwot, I think, is a little bit more spread out. But
Right.
One year, my family and I, we rode our bikes and
my
tried to see how many we could hit on our bikes. And you'll see a lot of people out on
Yeah.
bikes.
Oh,
so,
We get a lot of cyclists.
yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
And I don't know that I realized people actually can buy art during
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And so when the tour started, it was really a way for the artists to get a chance to interact with the community, but for also to sell their work. So Arts Longmont doesn't take any commission on sale, so it all goes back to the artist. So it's really about getting into their studios and meeting them, talking with them, seeing their work, and then purchasing their art.
Now, where exactly do we go to find out about this? Because, some people will want to plan this all ahead
Right.
of time.
So they can start on our website, like I said, artslongmont.org, and go to our Longmont Studio Tour page. There is images of all the work, their studio locations, there's an interactive map. Or they can come to the Arts Longmont Gallery. Starting now, we have the maps there.
Oh,
they can pick
good.
up their maps. There'll be maps available at the exhibition, which opens on the 8th.
All right. Thank you so much. And Joanne, thank you for coming.
Yes.
After a year, we let you go on. And we wish you a lot of luck. Susan,
Thank
thank you so much for arranging great videos for us.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.